All righty, we are going to start our study session. Hello? Shh. Thank you. Counselor Carney is not, so who's taking his items?
I'm taking it,
All righty, thank you.
so that is ready, President. It's a local office.
Thank you. And I have item 9, and assuming Monday that I'll have some. Got all that ready. Counselor Day.
Thank you, Madam President. I have items number 10 through 12. Item number 10, I think some of my colleagues may have some additional questions. Is there anyone here? Jen?
Yes, good afternoon. Jen Tift, NBD. And I apologize, I don't have the agenda right in front of me. Which one is 10?
10 is the ARPA funds for the economic development.
For SEDCO. Okay, perfect. Happy to answer questions. I don't know if you want me to say any introductory remarks, but.
Yeah, if you can give a short, brief, just.
Sure. Yeah, and a couple days ago, we sent over to everyone on the council a resolution that was developed after the last SEDCO board meeting, which happened last week, that basically lays out in a little bit more detail the program that the SEDCO board is proposing to move forward. And again, it basically has 3 primary components. There's a micro enterprise fund, which would be a dedicated $500,000 fund that would be made available as forgivable loans to kind of the smallest of the small businesses. We think of these as basically less than 10 employees. And again, that would have a forgivable component, so they would sign a loan agreement, and there would be a 2-year term, and so if certain criteria are met in those 2 years, then those loans are basically converted to grants. That's how you could think of it. And there would be a maximum grant amount or loan amount of $5,000 per business. The second kind of bucket would be a small business development fund. We would look to support businesses up to 50 people. That's sort of the more traditional definition of a small business. This would go a little bit higher, so we'd look to max out loan awards at $25,000, but those loans would have a 5-year term at 1.5% interest, so very, very favorable competitive loan terms for the small businesses. And then the third group would be a slightly larger opportunity for funding, but there would have to be a capital investment component. So that's really where we're looking to encourage businesses that are looking to make investments in their commercial property or in the commercial corridors to do that kind of thing. We'd be looking to loan them up to $200,000 for those capital intensive projects, and we could basically create loan terms as high as 15 years, which again, for 2%, which is very, very competitive for those types of capital projects and lending. So that's essentially the proposed program in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
So, may I?
Yes, please.
So with 25,000 and the 200,000, and I know that the 5,000 is what is forgivable after 2 years, how come is in there calculation or certain percentage forgiven for the 25,000?
I don't know if I understand the question, Councilor Majoke. Could you?
So let me say it again. So
Yeah.
that's the 5,000 after 2 years is forgivable, right?
Yes.
Because it can be converted to.
Yes.
To
Mhm.
grant. So the 25,000, that is not forgivable. My question is,
Correct.
with 25,000 and the 200,000, why isn't a certain percentage apply as well as forgivable?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So, I think our thinking was for the small business fund and then the capital improvement fund, basically for those 2 larger funds, we would treat those as more traditional loans for, commercial projects. I think one of the things that we wanted to really do for, again, the really, really small businesses was have a forgivable component, but I think the thinking is for businesses that are still small businesses, but they're, maybe a little bit larger, they're really in more of a stabilization place coming out of the pandemic than, kind of a recovery place. They have a little bit more capital potentially to invest in bigger projects. Again, whether it's a 1.5% interest rate or a 2% interest rate, those are both really hard to come by, even compared to other lending sources coming out of the pandemic. I mean, rates are still low across the board, but definitely not that low. So for business loans, so we did feel it was important for those businesses to put skin in the game and to to have a more traditional lending relationship. And again, this is a revolving loan program, so the expectation is that we're reinvesting this money, back into the community. And I think we wanted to have a forgivable component, again, for like the smallest of the small businesses. I think there's a lot of need out there still for just access to working capital. But I think if it's a slightly larger business, hopefully we can really help to stabilize them and help them to grow, but still, collect a little bit of interest from that, which we can then reinvest back into the business community.
I guess where I'm going with this, Jen, is that if we are to create an incentive for the other loaners, why couldn't we do it unilaterally forgiven? All are forgiven. I mean, where a certain percentage is forgiven, or nothing at all. Because forgiving $5,000 to those loaners, I'm wondering why wasn't there any thought also given to the $25,000 and the $25,000, or not be given at all?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Ultimately, I think what we're hearing and seeing in the community is, I think a willingness to, to seek out financing. So we haven't necessarily seen as much of a need for, forgivable loans for, some of the larger businesses or businesses that are looking to make capital investments, right? Which is really what the larger of the three programs is really intended to incentivize, right? Those investments in the physical infrastructure, the commercial properties. So, there I think it's just less, I think, traditional that we would do a forgiveness program around something like an investment in a physical building, for example.
So have you decided how much you're aiming for each different bucket, or is it kind of waiting to see how the application?
Yeah, so we did actually put a little, some of the parameters around it. That's in the resolution that I distributed. So what we talked about, at least initially, and we can always revisit it depending on what we see from the community, but we thought of the microenterprise fund as being a $500,000 fund. The small business assistance fund would be $1 million fund, and then the capital investment fund, which we're calling community development impact fund, would be $2.5 million. So if we lent out the maximum for each of those categories, I think it would be 180 businesses that we'd be serving. We know that we're not going to necessarily max out every single one, because some people will ask for less, right? So we think that's a minimum number. We're really trying to, in kind of devising those calculations, we're trying to basically serve the largest possible number of small businesses around the city. So that was kind of the rationale, and that's at least the thinking as of now for the allocations between the three.
For those that become grants, is there a reporting measure for them to ensure sustainability, or?
Yeah, so we're doing a couple of things with that, precisely to your question, Counselor. So we are requiring that those microenterprises have a relationship with one of the existing nonprofit organizations that serves to help small businesses. So that could be the Small Business Development Center, it could be WISE, there's a number of those in our community. The Southside Innovation Center is one of them. So we're asking, that those organizations basically work in a consultative, way with the small businesses, make sure they have a business plan, make sure they, really have a plan in place to weather the pandemic. the thought would be that, this would be a 2-year term for that program. So, we're not going to make the decision to convert it to a loan until after the end of that 2 years to make sure they've done that. I think we're also thinking about, if the business owns their commercial property, for example, we want to make sure they're tax current, again, by the end of that 2-year period. So we would work with someone in the interim if they weren't, in fact, but that would be the goal, to try to get them there. So there are a few of those types of things. We don't want it to be onerous on anyone, certainly, but we do know from the grants and the loans that we administered, during the pandemic, which, you all were very helpful with approving for the CDBG funds. The smallest of the small businesses, and we have tons of sole, proprietorships in the city. We have a lot of, very small businesses, 1, 2, 3 people, many of which were formed in the last year, so they didn't qualify for a lot of the other types of funding available. We don't want to make it too hard for them to apply for this. We do want to make it possible for them to apply for this money, but we also want to make sure that when we lend them the money or grant them the money, if these turn into forgivable loans, that they're going to be successful and they're going to make it to the 2 years.
Any additional question?
I know, I'm sorry. Did somebody else want to? Go ahead, President.
I heard you, Jen, talk about 180 businesses. It's just, my question is, through the pandemic, did we track how many businesses we lost and how many businesses we retained? Did we track, do we have those tracked?
So we don't really have a good source of information for that. I think anecdotally we know of, each of us probably knows of businesses that, closed, and then I think we all probably know of several businesses that opened, but there's not really a good single source of information officially from the state or the or local licensing entities, other than the businesses that have to come to us, for permits, for example, but not every new business would need a permit. So there really isn't a comprehensive list, unfortunately.
Councilman Hogan.
Yes, I'm with the grants that we did. That was PPE grants, correct?
No, so the city did not have a role to administer PPE. Well, the city did not
they had to
administer
demonstrate
PPP.
that
We
they
did have a PPE
Right.
element to some of the grants that we did, but that wasn't all that we funded. We funded other things too.
Well, let's not even get into that, but with the PPE, they had
Yes.
to show.
Yeah, that
bills
they spent it on the
on-
eligible
Right,
expenses.
exactly.
Yeah.
So is this predicated on demonstrable need?
It
And how we
is,
go- and how
yeah.
what kind of criteria are we using with that?
Well, so ARPA itself, to some degree, dictates some of the criteria. So, for example, in the ARPA legislation, I think it indicates that if a business showed a decline in revenue or a decline in employees, if they had to lay, a bunch of people off, for example, like those would be demonstrated need under the federal regulations. And our view would be that, if someone can show us those things, for example, they are eligible for these funds. I think even if a business can't necessarily show, that they lost 20% revenue or something like that, but if they're in a qualified census tract, right? So this is where the regulations get a little bit more complex, and we have sort of a list and kind of a matrix of, kind of if this, then this, if this, then that, just to try to track eligibility. But it's not as, I think there's more flexibility with these funds than there was, for example, when the state allowed IDAs to grant money, which we did. Our SIDA granted a lot of money for PPE. The state basically said, you can only provide this grant money for the protective equipment. This money is much more flexible. We can grant things for a much larger set of expenditures.
You was done, Councilman Hogan?
No,
Go ahead.
No, I'm still not quite sure on that and I'm wondering who determines when a loan becomes basically a grant?
Well, I think our staff that administers, SEDCO would basically determine that based on, again, kind of the criteria that we've laid out here. looking at whether they did, receive assistance from, one of the small business entities, or whether they did retain their staff, or, some of those things that we put here that we're looking for. Are they part of a priority industry, for example?
So our staff determines it.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Just a couple additional questions or concerns, Jen. We understand that the nature of our circumstances are quite different. Even still, when we had a community development department in the city, never before in its history has it given out so much money to so many unsubstantiated businesses. Now, I say that because, it appears, I understand the statement of criteria. That I think that's one of the point of questions we're trying to understand in detail, if we could, as much as we can, what that criteria is, because, when I look, to be candid, you look at the federal PPP loan, so many people took advantage of that.
Yep.
And so many people will likely be fined or worse, in prison because of it.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
It is not impractical that we could potentially run into the same thing, even with small amounts of money. So I think it's necessary that some kind of understanding of what's required, certainly some kind of reporting. I don't know if any, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of any government agency that, gives away money without the required reports and the like to substantiate
Right.
what an agency or whoever has done with that money.
Right.
And so I think a big part of some of the concerns, whether those things are in place, whether some sort of audit system is in place, again, being candid, for businesses that did not exist prior to COVID, we understand that that they're included in the opportunity. But I wouldn't think, and I'm sure, I know it's the same for you guys, that doesn't excuse them from the responsibility of being authentic. So I don't know if any of those concerns could be answered right now.
Yeah, I will just say, so a couple of things. So, one, certainly the, SEDCO has an independent board that is, that has fiduciary responsibility and has to some degree liability for the actions of that entity. I don't think we're going to be able to really launch this program in terms of actually being in a place to accept applications, or certainly not distributing funds until we have, the detailed application and sort of the complete list of, our criteria and all of those things, which would normally be a part of our procedure for any, lending program that we would do with SEDCO. So, that board has the responsibility to make sure that those things are, in alignment with ARPA, which is the funding source for this money, and then in alignment with SEDCO's policies and procedures, because we are a public authority under the public authority law. So to some degree, I know it's, you all are authorizing basically a allocation to a subrecipient in this case, but in some ways that subrecipient does, very much have the responsibility and takes that responsibility, I think, very seriously for making sure that loans that it gives out are ultimately in alignment with whatever the funding source requirements are. And, just as a reminder, one of the counselors on this body is also on that board. So I'm sure he can speak to his experience being on that board. But regardless, I think we do need to your point, make sure we have a real clear set of procedures for approving these particular loans, because it will be, we'll use a different set of criteria, and we'll use a different application, frankly, than the application we use for a traditional SEDCO loan. It's going to be a special application aligned to the ARPA requirements. So, and we don't know the final rules either, right? So that's the other thing we're obviously all waiting on, is to sort of see if there are going to be other specific requirements that the federal government says are needed from a reporting perspective in particular. So the reporting will have to align back to that. The other thing I'll just point out, and we're happy to, I think, do this, but, if the council desires a quarterly report, for example, from SEDCO about the activities under this program in terms of what's being done to recruit, businesses or create businesses' interest in applying for the loans, and then certainly when loans are reviewed and evaluated and awarded, I think we're happy to do that. For council. So whatever you think is appropriate in terms of reporting back to this body, I think we're very happy to do that. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because, of course, we'll have to do federal reporting, but.
Yeah, well, as it stands, and I understand, the nature of SECO. I understand the argument that is often made about the fact that it's an authority, which is suggestive in itself when that statement is often made. Even still, until that detail is understood, we're going to hold this for now. I just want to clear for everybody, oftentimes the moving of an object onto the agenda doesn't qualify as automatic passage. It's just for further discussion. I just want to make sure we understand that, but we would need to understand it. Well, on the subject of quarterly reports, I won't put words in any of my colleagues' mouth. I guess we can ultimately determine if that's necessary, but what is necessary is an understanding of whatever that criteria is for the recipients of money to be responsible, to use it responsibly, so on and so forth, as any other government agency will require them to do. So that item we'll hold for now.
Can I ask Jen that at some point, once the application is put together, I don't know about my colleagues, but I would like to see it before it starts being disseminated amongst the businesses?
Sure, yeah, we wouldn't put an application together, obviously, until we have the program approved by this body. And then, as I said, in the committee meeting, we would really look to work with all of you and in particular, the district counselors to actually do a lot of community engagement to make sure everyone's aware of the program and knows how to apply for it before we start receiving applications. So, we are hoping to take a couple months, to market this, to educate people about this, and to do technical assistance so people can apply for it. We're not going to try to, as soon as you guys approve it, we wouldn't try to issue loans immediately, because I think we do need to do a fair amount of community engagement and business engagement, because this is a decent amount of money. So we want to make sure the pipeline is pretty robust in terms of the number of businesses applying for it. So there will be a lot of opportunity, I think, to get your input on application and outreach to the small businesses and that sort of thing. But definitely want to make sure, first and foremost, you're comfortable with the program, to approve it before it moves forward. So that sounds good.
All right, thank you.
President, did you plan on holding a committee meeting on this? I forget.
Not sure yet.
I didn't know if you had mentioned that.
No, I didn't. We'll see. I don't know if the other councilors who had questions would be satisfied with receiving some kind of understanding by Monday. I'm not sure if that can be provided by Monday, but if it could.
Yeah, I think we could.
And then Councilor Driscoll, I'll make that determination on Monday. Then, obviously, if we're satisfied, then there would be no need. But if there's still concern, then I'll mention as much then. Right.
Yeah, we'd really appreciate it. We can try to get something turned around in the next day.
I have two quick questions for Tim. First, the $4 million, and if it is too long, maybe we could wait for Monday. How did we come to determination that $4 million was sufficient, or how did you come to that amount? Was there some kind of
Yeah, so it's a great question, Counselor. I'd love to say we had a scientific way to come up with that number. We really didn't, arguably. I think, again, from a lot of anecdotal conversations and, discussions with the business community and just, some knowledge of some of the projects that businesses would like to do. Maybe businesses would like to invest in their property. Maybe they would like to, buy new equipment because their equipment is, no longer sufficient. Some of those things require a bit more capital than some of the businesses probably have on hand, or, they would probably prefer to have a loan like this than take out a 7, 8, 9% loan through, their bank. So we wanted it to be sufficient enough to be able to do some of the capital investment components of this. But ultimately, I think, we're going to have to kind of see how many applications we get, what they're like, have more conversations with the business community about what the needs are, to determine is this sufficient at the end of the day? And, so I think we'll probably look to do it in a few rounds and over time, just to be able to really maximize the benefit of this, pretty large pot of money. But I'm sure it will go quickly if there's a lot of folks willing to make these kinds of investments in the commercial infrastructure of the city.
So since we didn't know the number or some kind of determining factor as to what brought this decision forth, what happened 2 years from now if there's money left over? Where do they go?
Yeah, so, I think hopefully we won't wait for 2 years to figure that out. I think we need to monitor it, very regularly so we know if we're gonna, miss the mark, either we don't have enough or it's too much, to your point. We would certainly look, I think, if there was ever a situation where we were having a hard time distributing loans in this way, I think as a city, we'd look to maybe reallocate those funds to other initiatives. But we'd have to, consider that at that point. We certainly believe there is a lot of need out there in the business community today for additional financial support with everything that's happened in the last year. So we can cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, I think we'd have to look at it very closely and figure out if it can be reallocated. Again, we have until December 2024 to spend this money.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 11 is the agreement with T&T. I'm not sure if any of my colleagues have any questions in regards to that. And item 12 is a special permit for indoor amusement park recreation, 530 South Clinton. Anyone here is from zoning? Ms. Lemondola.
Good afternoon, councilors. This is a special permit for essentially a gym, indoor amusement recreation at 530 South Clinton, to be used by workers who are in the Pomeroy building, which is 225 West Jefferson.
Any questions? Thank you. So item 10 held with a question mark, 11 and 12 are ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Green.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 13 is a settlement that will be discussed in executive session. Item 14 is to retain an appraiser. Does anyone have any questions on item 14? Okay. Item 15 is to correct the tax rolls. Does anyone have any questions on item 15? Item 16 is a waiver of competitive bid for process serving. Any questions on this item? And item 17 is a waiver of competitive bid for printing. Any questions on that? Not? Those items are ready. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, Councilor Hogan in place of Councilor Carney.
Yes, thank you, President Hudson. I have the items for Councilor Carney, and they are items 18 through 47. We went over these at length during our standing committee meetings. I have a particular, if there's not any other questions, I have questions that are posed to me by Councilor Carney regarding 26 and 28. So I guess these are DPW questions. I know Commissioner Robinson's here. I see him in the back row. Neil.
Good afternoon, Council. Neil Burke, DPW.
26 is the DPW Fire for Optics Trunk Replacement Program. And
Correct.
I didn't see, Councilor Carney mentioned to me that you didn't see it in the capital improvement plan. So where are we getting the money for this? Is it going to be ARPA money or?
That's a great question. I would defer to the budget office who will put this together, but yeah, this is a program that's been in place for a while. However, the estimates were high.
Okay, we'll just find out where the money comes from, maybe
Sure.
Corey can help us out. And then 28 is the Department of Public Works to proceed with the DPW garage wash bay project. When they're constructing this,
This is for Mary.
Mary, when they're constructing, I mean, I think it's probably going to be more of a DPW question, but when they're building this thing, what are we going to do in lieu of that?
Well, that is a DPW question. The DPW wash bay,
What are you going to be doing in lieu of this being under construction?
Currently, how you doing,
How you
Councilman?
doing? Good, Commissioner. How you doing?
Hey, Commissioner of Public Works, Jeremy Robinson. We're currently, I think Rich DeVesti is, who's our garage manager. He's, not garage manager, sorry, fleet manager. He's currently taking the trucks outside and washing them out there because it's unsafe to wash them in the wash bay. So we're using a hookup from our water system outside and washing them out there.
Okay. What happens when the snow starts flying? What do we do then?
Good question. That would be a question for Rich. I'm quite sure we have a plan for that. I know it's unsafe when the snow is on top of the roof.
Right.
We would have to come up with a plan.
Okay, well, if you could just maybe confer with him and we'll talk Monday.
Definitely.
Okay.
Can I throw in my 2 cents? I'm going to throw it in. Okay, my 2 cents, since I've been sitting on this council, has been that we have so many different facilities all over the city of Syracuse that if we're going to keep bonding and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, why can't we find one large parcel and put all of our facilities in one spot? I'm just going to keep asking that every time it comes up.
Rich DeVesti, Fleet Director. We've looked into it. It would take an immense amount of space. We just don't have, you fit in fire trucks and police and everything. There's just too many vehicles. There's 1,000 vehicles.
So for me, okay, and I mean, we have a lot of empty property in the city of Syracuse. So for me, is there any way that you can get the numbers from police, from fire, from DPW, from water, from everybody on how much we're spending on facilities? Can we
Yeah,
get
I can
total?
find that. I
Okay.
usually concentrate on the machines themselves, but I'll find out what we have in the, I mean, the
because
buildings have
over
been in the city
years, I'd like to
forever.
know how much money we've actually invested and if it would be worth doing a capital project.
Okay,
And maybe we would save some money.
okay, I could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from my counselors regarding any of these items?
Yeah, Councilor Hogan, just for Neil Burke, on the traffic management center operation program. I didn't want to call you back up during a long study session, so I figured,
I noticed all the DPW guys sitting in the back
I
row.
figure I'd ask.
Yeah, we try and stay out of sight here. Sorry,
10 o'clock
Councilor.
mass and most holy rosary.
Yeah, do we owe any money to the state relative to this program?
We don't owe any money. We work with the state very closely since they reimburse us for staffing of the traffic management center.
Okay. Because Councilor Carney thought the opposite. He thought they owed us money, but
That'd be nice.
yeah, it would be. But I figured that one wasn't true. Okay. All right, I appreciate it. Neil.
No problem.
That's all I had, Councilor.
Counselor, I have a question on item 42. I'm sorry, this is the water department, and I wasn't here for the study session or the committee meeting, so I apologize, but I'm just looking for a little background. I mean, it's 1.15 million for security and fencing, and I'm just a little more detail on, just seems a lot.
Good afternoon, Joe Aywald, Commissioner of Water. So item 42 is regarding security at our water shop. So we're looking for some additional cameras, lighting, and also a fence along the Erie Boulevard portion of our yard. Currently, we have a 5-foot wooden fence, Historically, people have jumped the fence, gotten into the yard. We've had a few vehicles stolen over the years. We've recovered them, but, you know, to prevent vandalism and anything like that inside the yard, that's what we're looking for.
What sort of fencing's there now?
Right now, it's just a 2x4 wooden fence painted red. Not much of a deterrent. So we did a study on what options we have available and did a cost estimate based on that study.
Okay.
What would the new fence look like?
There's multiple of options. The one we were kind of settling on was more of a block wall, similar to the facade of the building right now, a little higher so people can't jump the fence and get in.
Commissioner, I have a little experience in this. I mean, basically, you only have one person basically there all the time through the night, correct?
Well, we have two dispatchers. We have the water dispatcher and the DPW dispatcher inside the facility.
Okay, so, I mean, I know that there's been plenty of problems over there over the years, so I think this is well-spent money as far as security goes.
So what's the scale of it? I mean, how often does it get vandalized or stolen?
Well, actually, 2 weeks ago, we had somebody just jump the fence. One of our guys was walking out in the yard at 6 o'clock, kind of startled the person, and they jumped back over the fence over Erie Boulevard. So it happens, you know, probably at least several times a year.
Is that it?
Any other questions?
Not for you.
Okay.
Number 33, Councilor Holt.
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to know, I remember, didn't we had an agreement with City of Camillus for solid recycling or solid waste, something like that, right? Commissioner, could you come and just talk about 33 for a second? Okay.
What's the question?
So my question here is, you know, for the recycling, didn't we had an agreement, or am I mixing? Didn't we have some agreement with the town of Camillus?
Yeah, that's not what this, though.
That's not it, right?
No.
Okay.
You talking about the study you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Is that part of
Incorporated?
that, or just to determine what is better?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just a study to see what, you know, what's better for us as a city as a whole.
Okay. Okay.
That Camillus landfill was just saving us, I think it was $10 or 10 cents, $7, something like that.
Okay.
I don't remember,
Right, thank you.
but it was saving us money.
Yeah.
Finished there, Counselor?
I am done, Counselor.
Anybody else? It's like last call, which I remember. Okay, all these items are ready then, President Hudson. And now I'm next, too.
I think you are. Yeah, Counselor
I have
Holt.
items 48 through 52. Once again, these were all discussed in our standing committees. Where's the commissioner? Commissioner, why don't you, oh, you got Steve here. Why don't you explain a little bit about 48 there, Steve?
Good afternoon. The first item is about allocating $2 million from the ARPA funds for the Urban Forest Master Plan.
Any questions?
Is there already a plan? Like, you already have designated locations for?
That is something that's always ongoing. We plant through requests. We have about 150 of those where a property owner calls and makes a request. We have target areas we want to plant trees, and then we have the areas that we're going to focus on where we have our lowest canopy, and we'll do outreach, we'll find the sites. But we're confident we'll be able to plant about 1,200 trees a year through these funds. The second item is
The chip,
the chip truck.
yes.
Part of our fleet. I practice in front of a mirror for all of you. We just need a truck to tow our chipper and to help us be more operational. And that's what this is, not a previous vehicle in our fleet.
Quick question for you. On number 48, you said 1,200 trees on your 48 It says 3,600.
$1,200 a year for 3 years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. 51 is a memorandum of understanding of the Syracuse Parks Conservancy, longstanding organization that's supported the parks, and 52 is a lease agreement with Turf Tank. Yes, let's hear about this.
Julie LaFave, Commissioner of Parks and Rec. You're asking for an explanation of the turf tank?
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to authorize or purchase under a lease agreement with Turf Tank, which is GPS robotic field painting. We would be able to line a field, for instance, a soccer field, in around 30 minutes, where it would take our crew, who does not have that training, probably an entire day to do. So this will highly make us more efficient. We'll be able to highly increase what we can do in our parks and line fields in ways that we've never been able to do.
Exact.
It doesn't take away any jobs, right?
No, because we would train our staff to do it, to be the operators of this.
Is Council Hogan getting trained too?
No.
I've been trained in other things.
Okay.
Is that it for my colleagues?
That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, they're all ready, President Hudson.
Councilor Majok.
Thank you, Madam President. I have item 53, 62. Just the first item there. I thought, John, wasn't that supposed to be under finance or? Yes. Okay.
We're basically doing a budget. We're not voting for the contract, you're just voting for the means, the funds, so it's under the wrong committee, I'm sorry.
And along with that, Budget Director, we'll get some sort of rundown of where we're getting this money. Like, you'll send us something to pay for this.
Which item?
The
53.
53. Okay. It was yes during the standing committee too. So we'll look forward to seeing it. Yes. Thank you, Budget Director. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Counselor. Item 56. So does Rich oversee this as well, the fleet manager? Or does the police department do their own?
We are.
Oh, okay, sorry, keep going.
Any other question on 53?
Just to let you know, we did lay this on the desk, so it's eligible for a vote.
It's already. So, okay. Executive session?
Sorry, because you're not voting on the contract.
Any other question? I think that's it.
No, I just want to point out that it was here, but somebody removed my local law, so I can get another copy on this desk. That'd be appreciated.
We did send everybody out a copy.
Yeah, I know it's supposed to be on our desk, but it was removed, so I'm just putting that.
We'll get you a-
Yeah, it was here, but it's gone. All right.
Okay, thank you. Item 54.
Hi, Councilors. Joe Cecil, First Deputy Chief with the Syracuse Police Department. Item number 54 is the contract we have with the State Fair every year, minus last year, where we send out our gang task force detectives to just wander around and see if they can engage potential gang members, or I shouldn't say potential, gang members, to see if they can diffuse situations before they occur. This is for $42,000. It's a little higher than usual because the fair is, I think, 5 days longer than it usually is.
I think we discussed this item.
I have a
last week.
question.
You have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. So is this is obviously overtime for the officers, right?
It is.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Sure.
That's what the reimbursement is for?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Chief, can I ask you a question on that one? So, argument sake, if one of our officers had to have an incident at the fair, who picks up the benefits if he's hurt? Do we pick that up?
We would pick it up. He would be in the performance of his or her duty. We would pick that up.
So this is just purely just for the time, does it? It doesn't include other long-term coverage or anything like that? It's for the pure time, does it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. It's a contract just for the fair and for the time they're there.
Any other questions? All right, 55, as we talked about them last week, anyone with specific question on these ones? Oh, okay. Chief, go line by line. then.
Sure. So okay. So 55 is training that Chief Buckner is familiar with. He wants to bring it to Syracuse. It's for $5,500. It would be training for the lieutenants, captains, and the deputy chiefs. It's called command. It's basically command presence. Not by chance leadership is the actual title of the training. I sent it out early today. I apologize I didn't get it out to you before, but I do have the curriculum that I sent out to the counselors that were at the committee meeting last time around. It is not for public use, so if you could just keep that to yourselves. There's some proprietary information in there by the company themselves. But it's about culture change, transparency, mission first, people always. And again, it's for lieutenants on up. The chief has seen this training work elsewhere, and he just wants to bring it here. The big thing about it is to create basically a cultural change in the police department from the command staff down.
And we're gonna see that happen in 4 months.
I remember you saying it was different from some of the other trainings. What particularly is the culture?
This particular company, I guess, comes in and teaches these commanders how to be part of that change, but also to basically, if you look through the curriculum, it has stuff in there about owning your mistakes, being transparent, make sure you report the good, the bad, and the ugly, things like that. So it's far more out. It reaches far more broadly than any of the other training I've seen us do before.
Great, thanks.
Chief, why wouldn't you include sergeants?
I think that it's just basically cost. I think once we go through it, it is very likely that we'll probably do sergeants, but right now it's just a cost associated with that. The sergeants already go through in-service training twice a year, so they're getting some type of training, not this particular training. But I don't necessarily think that we would not bring them on board after we go through it.
Any other questions? All right.
So 56 is the vehicle purchases. Keep in mind, we didn't purchase vehicles in 2020, and we didn't purchase them in 2019. If you look at the attachment, even though it shows 20 marked and 15 unmarked, the chief has already made it clear, because of needs, we will be going, this is just like a bookmark, we will be going heavily in the marked vehicle, probably upwards of 80% marked, 20% unmarked, possibly even beyond that, because our need right now is marked vehicles, not unmarked.
Chief, so for the other departments, a lot of times when we get these, you'll get a breakdown of the existing vehicles, the mileage and the years. Do we have the ability to have something like that for this?
Yeah, they have a computer system that could do that for you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you could send that
That's
over.
what our current fleet then?
Yeah, just so we can evaluate the need for this, basically.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Chief.
Okay, 57 is a request a capital budget project request for $315,603. Keep in mind, the entire project would be $688,025. This is for a new RMS system called Niche. Niche is the gold standard of RMS, which is record management system. 80% of what the police officers do these days, contrary to Blue Bloods, where I've never seen Danny Reagan do even one report. The 80% of what they do out there is reports. The current system we have is somewhat redundant. keep in mind, if an officer, say, goes to a burglary, he or she's gonna do what's called a 15, an investigative report, with all that information. Then he or she's gonna do a property report, adding all that same information, and then an evidence report, and so on and so forth. It does not repopulate from report to report, even though an officer may do 5 or 6 reports on any one call. This system does. It pre-populates reports. You do one report, it pre-populates all the other reports you need for that call. It also integrates with CAD, our computer-aided dispatch system. So even as the officer is traveling to the call, it is already putting down in his report or her report the address, the time, the date of the call, what type of call it is. It's already writing part of this report for him or her before they even get there. The concept here is to get them out from behind the computer and back in service so they can take more calls. This system would do that. Our current system was great for the last 20, 24 years, but it is outdated now because of these things. This thing also comes already right to know compliant. It comes NIBRS compliant, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System that is required of every department for grants and funding. This automatically comes compliant with all those different things from the moment we started up, from the moment we integrated.
How many other municipalities are we seeing adopting this system already, and how's it going with them? Are we kind of breaking ground here, or is this something that's well?
Sure. So as far as urban, yeah, we're breaking ground. None of the central New York towns, villages, sheriff's department, no one has this system. We will be the first. However, the New York State Troopers went to it. It took them over a year because of their size to integrate it, but they are up and running with niche New York State Troopers. I will tell you this, Counselor, sorry to interrupt. I will tell you this, in the PROC meeting I go to, which oversees CNY Leads, which is our current system, and has county there, towns and villages, DA's office, county IT. They researched 3 different RMSs because they were going to go to this as well. They researched it in 2019, and this came out number 1, and we were moving toward a countywide one, and then COVID hit, and money dried up. And the county, I believe, and I'm saying this on the record, once they see the success of this system, my guess is since they already approved it early on in 2019, we'll find funds and join this RMS system.
Will there be potential for cost savings there if the city and the county collab?
There will, absolutely. The larger we get, the larger licenses that go out, the price goes down. There's no doubt about it.
Deputy Chief Cecil, so I'm glad you mentioned Right to Know. Can you give me or us an update on the reporting aspect of that law and where we're at and how the system might help you complete that task?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I'll answer the first one, or the last one first. If we had this system in place when Right to Know was implemented, it would have already took all that data in and spit it out in that sheet that you're looking for, the data, the quarterly reports. It would have already done that. It's done it elsewhere, and it would have done it here. It wouldn't have had that second step that we're doing right now, where officers are filling out a PDF, then it's going to records, and then we have records people going through these PDFs and pulling out the data that you need for your quarterly report and implementing it. That's where the most of the time is taking right now. So as far as an update on Right to Know, I just saw the first data set for the quarterly report this morning. It looks great. We're just going through the numbers now to make sure we've captured everything you need, and we are in target August, well, it won't be August 1st because it's Sunday, but next week we will be putting out that quarterly report to all of you, and I would imagine, I know the deputy mayor's here, I would imagine we'll be putting that on our website and the city's website as well, but we are fully on target with putting that out next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think this is a smart investment, obviously, very efficient, and I agree. I never seen Danny Reagan do a report either. You know.
I'm sorry.
I said I've never seen Danny Reagan do a report either. So I agree with you. I don't know how many people in here watch Blue Bloods.
Thanks, Counselor. Yeah. In all the cop shows other than Barney Miller, Barney Miller's the only one where they did reports. All the other ones, no one did any.
I'm the only one who remembers Barney Miller.
Well, I was looking straight at you, that's why.
I watched a lot of Barney Miller.
Barney Miller.
Any other questions?
So number 58 is our phone upgrade. It's another capital budget project for $288,000. Our phones have not been upgraded almost as long as I've been on the department. For 30 years, I'm told. We have not upgraded our phone system. Minor tweaks here and there, but not upgrades. So what's happening now is we are losing communication when we're on the phone, but most importantly, we're losing voicemails. So in many of us, in case, even mostly in the chief's office, but also the front desk, different places where we have voicemails set up, so people can call us with complaints, concerns, what have you. Sometimes in the morning, we're coming in and we're not having those, so it's very frustrating to the public when we run into them at a meeting and they say, we called you a couple times and you didn't return our call. This phone system would be our first upgrade in 30 years, and it's very much needed.
How is that gonna, I mean, I know how it works with the 911 system now, so, because I think that we need to have an offline conversation, because I really would like to see the 911 system change over the way it works, because I know that when our calls go in at a certain point, it cuts it off, and if they send it to a certain entity, there's no record previously in our system. And I find that to be problematic. So I want to have a conversation about that.
Just let me know, Counselor. I go to a PROC meeting up there as well once a month, and I can bring it up. It's a county entity, obviously, but anytime we have concerns in the city, we're their biggest customer, I can bring it up there. Just let me know what it is, specifically.
Okay.
Chief, are you on the same, I'm sorry. Are you on the same system that City Hall's on? Because I know we're experiencing the issues here with the calls being dropped, so is it the same issue, or is it related?
Our system's different. In fact, we have our first numbers are 442 and City Hall is 448, so I think it's a completely different system, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Keep going, Chief.
Okay, so number 59, again, this is the one I know the least about. If you want specifics, I can certainly have someone from IT come. This is a computer upgrade. It's basically our servers for the most part. Our servers are full now. We need to upgrade them and actually get larger servers for the data that we collect on a daily basis, whether it's data from CAD or data from not body cams, because those go into the cloud, but the data from the street cameras. A tremendous amount of data gets collected in these servers and internal things. So this is mostly software upgrades and server upgrades.
Questions? Keep going.
I think, is 59 my last one?
The six.
Yeah, the rest is CRB.
I think those are all
That's all. Yeah.
CRB, right?
Yes, sir.
If I could just ask a question of Chief Cecil. Chief, we had a conversation earlier, or we exchanged emails. Would ARPA money, or maybe this is to the budget director, would ARPA money fund, cameras or shot spotter or something like that? Because we continually in neighborhood groups, as I'm sure your captains bring back to you, they keep on asking for cameras on street corners and things like that. Why wouldn't we be able to spend money for more cameras and, shot spotter? Cover all the city.
Did you want to take that one? Sure. Deputy Mayor, thanks.
We're actually working with First Deputy Chief right now, so it is a priority for us under that public safety category. Absolutely.
Because, we're getting a lot of, obviously,
shot
ARPA
spotters,
requests.
the cameras,
But
body
we're getting
cams.
a lot of ARPA requests now, and I just think that would be just a great thing for
The other thing it
neighborhoods.
provides us, and I've talked with Joe about this, is it provides us some flexibility. Usually when we have to, we're dependent upon the state and the process we have now where citizens identify. And so the process is they look at the several blocks in the community and identify cameras, and then we're beholden. And then they, to put the cameras in that community, but then the police prioritize where to put them. Every now and then, there's like one area where one camera would do a lot for a particular neighborhood. Joe and I have been talking about with a constituent, just one camera over there. This approach through ARPA would give us that flexibility.
Right, and we got TNT, we got the neighborhood
Yep.
watch, I mean, this comes up all the time. I
We
was
would-
talking to Councilor, excuse me, Bay about it earlier.
We would still look to our state legislators to also continue that process, but we think that this gives us an opportunity to expand that flexibility.
Okay, thank you. So we expect to see it maybe a couple of weeks?
Yeah, Joe is working on the budget, and something should be coming to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll leave the rest of the 2 hours to Councilor Allen. That's it.
Thank you, Counselor Allen.
Thank you. I have items 63 through 69. Item 63, we're going to hold again to have further discussion. I know, Mr. Berry, you reached out, you weren't here last week, and Council President wasn't here last week, so we're going to hold item. And item 64, Commissioner Collins. I know Caitlin has been texting me all day. She's on vacation, but she did share some details. I asked her how much the average cost of the demos would be. She said $28,000 per demo, and every 6 months. She's looking to get all of them done within the 18 months, as far as the $500. But she would provide us an update at the 6-month mark to let us know how many have been demoed and how much money is left over. And she's trying to get at least 50 done before the winter.
So, Councilor, to follow up on that, in the conversations that Caitlin Wright and I have had, she's able to go pretty close, deep into the winter, depending on weather, with the construction. Excuse me, with the demolition, and then for the stabilization, it simply depends on whether or not we're dealing with internal or external projects on the properties. Window replacement's one thing, roof replacement's another.
Any questions on that item? Okay, so that'll be ready. And 65?
So 65 being the
Actually, 65 is the demos.
yeah. So what we had was the ordinances where one was to allocate the funds and the other was to create the expense.
Yeah, okay. All right, and so item 66, I know Councilor Bay had a question on that.
Yeah, in the short, this is kind of like rent relief, right, for landlords and or tenants?
So specifically, it's rental assistance for tenants that have not yet qualified for any of the previous income, any of it due to their income limits. So HUD dollars have, as well as the previous Treasury dollars, have limited up to 80% of the area median income. So we're targeting that 80 to 100% that are working but not making enough to make it through the situation.
So just a question, no part of that is offset by the assistance programs at the county and the Fed for landlords? Because I know landlords can apply themselves for, rent, lost rent. And this none of those programs offset this?
So the challenge that we have in doing something that is landlord only is being able, in everything that we've talked about, that you've all talked about as a body, and we've been really concerned about, is making sure that we can pass an audit on this and being able to
No,
please.
no.
Yeah.
I'm not saying give landlords money. What I'm saying is, are there programs, so you have I understand there's a certain segment of the population who may not qualify as renters for assistance because of their income. What I'm saying, has there been consideration for the fact that those landlords could have already sought that relief from the county or Fed program?
Understood. So there needs to be documentation that this is back due rent. So they could not have, you cannot qualify if you do not owe the rent. And so the tenant would have to demonstrate that rent is still there, and that's going to include the landlord certifying what's owed.
Okay, all right, that's what I was going to ask.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Sure.
But actually, you don't really have to come up. There's no questions on this. We're all set, because we discussed it during the committee meeting, so I'm fine with that. And then items 68 and 69, Counselor Hogan, you were okay with moving item 68?
Yes, I am, Counselor Allen.
All right, and then item 69 was ready as well. And
Righty, thank you.
Before you adjourn, Mary Robeson, did you want to talk about, is she here still? Mary Robeson was waiting to talk about a potential waiver item. Do you know if she can come back, or? I can tell you what the background of the item is. We have a local law, is number 8A, for Niagara Mohawk to have a permanent easement, and once that's passed on Monday, it takes a few weeks before it gets filed with the Secretary of State, because there needs to be a local law hearing and everything, and as a result of that, she wants to put on the waiver a temporary permission so that Niagara Mohawk can start the work process of a local law going into effect. So she was going to request that today. She called me yesterday to talk about it. I suggested that she bring it to your attention today. So I don't know if she's going to come back or not, but that's the essence of it. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought we'd be done.
Hi, counselors. Yes, I have a waiver item, if you guys will entertain it. This is related to the easement, item A. Counselor Carney, basically Niagara Mohawk is starting this project, and after you approve the easement on Monday, it has to go through the local law process, which takes a bit of time. And Grid is really anxious to be able to stay on schedule with the project. So I talked to the law department, and we can amend a previous ordinance, Ordinance 287, which authorized the temporary use and access agreement to 3 parcels, and that was for staging. So I'm proposing to amend that ordinance to allow them access to the easement area to begin construction until such time that the local law makes it through the process in Albany.
Sounds okay to me.
And you would, obviously, if you didn't approve the easement on Monday, then we wouldn't approve this item either.
Okay, good. So I will take the letter from the city engineer, and we'll put it on the waiver agenda.
Thank you very much, counselors.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
Second.